was lunch, friends? There we go. All right. So what we're going to do for the rest of the afternoon is in mere moments, I will bring out Jessica and she and I will talk about building your brand's community on social media. We'll do that in just a second. Before we do that, I'm going to kind of level set on some pragmatic things you guys can do to build your own communities, and then we'll do the networking, and then we'll end this afternoon with another session with Gus, and then we'll do Calvin Johnson, and then we'll be out of here. Sound good? Oh, for the love of it. Okay, all right. Are you guys, is everyone still with me? Okay, cool. We're going to jump into this, okay? I'm going to do about 15 minutes, and we're going to bring out Jessica. My name is Eric Hulkran. My title is Director of Brand Strategy and Social Media. But what I do is I tell stories. And so when we're talking about community, there's a lot of places that we can start. There's a lot of different definitions for community on these very ugly slides. These are the ugliest slides I will show you today, because we're not doing any of these definitions. What I'm going to use today is a band and a human. That human is Seth Godin. That band is Pearl Jam. And I'm going to pull two quotes, and we're going to build a community with your brand around those two quotes. The first one is, people like us do things like this. Your community shows up for your brand because you bring them value. And as you've heard this morning, that value can be defined by a myriad of things. What you do with social justice and inclusion, what you do in technology, what you do in real estate, how great your product is. Your community shows up because of the value you bring. And then the most important thing when we're building a strategy around a brand is a quote from the band Pearl Jam. We're not for everybody. We're not. No brand is. If you brand for everybody, you brand for nobody. So we brand for those who show up to imbibe in our brand, to meet us some way, right? All right, so we're here to talk about social media. We need another definition so that we understand what we're talking about. When we define social media marketing, we use the word social. That is what we're doing right now. We are all gathered together in a group. Media is just the lens by which people see the world around them. And marketing is just getting somebody to take an action, right? Getting them to do something. And so social media marketing is using a network to get someone to take an action. And we as humans are meaning-making machines. And that means if we go all the way back in time to the cognitive revolution, we were storytellers in our head first before we told each other stories. We had them in our head. And then we shared those stories and moved to the agricultural revolution. No one knew this was going to be a history exam. It's amazing. And then from this history exam, we moved to the scientific revolution, try and figure out how things worked. And since we're a tool-based culture, the industrial revolution. And now whatever the heck we're doing right now, right? Whatever this revolution is. It's the same reason that everybody in this room knows what to do when they see this. We've decided as a community, I'll pause for the photo, and the culture, that we're going to stop, right? And we do the same things with our brands. And so what is your brand story, and why should a community care about it? Why should a group of people care about your brand? All good stories come in three parts, right? A beginning, a middle, and an end. Can we agree on this? Thank you. Perfect. Got some participation. We'll get there. And if we agree on this, then most of the stories that we tell ourselves actually center around a single formula, known as the monomyth. You might also know it as the hero's journey. When we're talking about the hero's journey starts with, surprisingly, a hero. And that hero gets a call to adventure. And in this particular case, in this particular room, they might be introduced to your product. That is the call to adventure. But I'm going to pause real quick, because in many rooms when I start talking about this, they get super excited because the brand thinks they're the hero. You are not the hero of this story, friend. You are the mentor. You are the guide. You are the person that they look to navigate through this space, whatever that means. But the good news is, most guides were at some point a hero, and those heroes that turned into mentors can be pretty dope, right? So you are the mentor. And these heroes go on an ordeal in stories that can be fighting monsters, that can be discovering the clues to unsolve a riddle, whatever that thing is. Specifically in this room, this is people that we are bringing into our brands. More specifically, for those of you in this room, these are the outsiders that we want to be insiders. How do we bring new people into this space? How do we get people to understand the magic by which we are doing in rooms like this? And then, when they have an experience with your brand, they go home and they tell people about that experience. And this is why when I get in some of these rooms, I talk a lot about your staff. If your staff has killer, amazing customer service, that goes a long way to building that community around your brand, because they go home and they tell people, I didn't know anything about X, and then these people told me all about their product, and I tried it, and I had a great time, and you should too, right? So as we're walking through this hero's journey, which is every piece of media that you bump into, streaming or otherwise, right? We try and understand why we tell ourselves stories. And the number one reason that we tell ourselves stories is we're trying to connect with one another. And if we get really, really good at telling stories, that connection makes us feel something. And with consumers using these devices nearly 5 hours a day, the thing we cannot do to build our brand is just run more ads. And we have research to show that. If we run just ad after ad after ad, I know in this room that's a little wonky because it's not all things to all people, but even however you run ads after ads after ads, it ends up being wasted because we're not connecting with them. It wastes billions of dollars and drives them crazy, and they're gone, right? They're not part of our community. So what can we do? We tell stories. And we're going to talk a lot about this when Jessica comes up. And when I talk about how we can drive culture in our brands, there's really one way that I like to do it, and I would do it even if I wasn't in Detroit, and it's using a car as an analogy. And so if you're a brand trying to drive your culture, there are really only 3 positions that you can be in. The first one is driving that culture. And a lot of you in this room are doing just that. You are the tip of the spear. You're driving the culture, teaching people what this should look like and what it looks like into the future. The second one, and a lot of our customers land in this, they're the passenger. They're along for the ride. They're in on the culture. They're in on the joke. The place we don't want to be is at the tailpipe of culture, right? We don't want to be sucking the tailpipe of culture. And we want to, and the example I would use is, right, we want to be Noodles the dog. We do not want to be the radio station that's doing No Bone Saturday. That's the difference. And the other way I put this is the difference between a moment and a movement. And let me give you some examples. So we're going to compare 2 pieces of media. One is Squid Game and one is Bond. They came out about the same time. Yes, I know that Bond was supposed to come out 2 years earlier, but it didn't. They came out at the same time. But they had 2 very different results. One of them was a moment, and the other one was a movement. James Bond cost about $250 million to create. About 35 million humans watched it for a total of $667 million to the movie studio. Consequently, the Squid Game cost $21 million to create, $800 million to Netflix, and 125 million human beings watched that show. By any data measurement, they would have won this battle, but that's not what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is watching things that happen in culture that move. So leave Netflix to go do something else. What does that look like? That looks like this. A 7,800% increase in the sale of white vans after the show came out in the United States. What that is, friends, is a community of human beings gathering together and signaling that they are in on the joke, right? They understand this culture. Moments versus movements. And why I love coming to rooms like this and talking with all of you is, 1, you might be the warmest group of human beings I've ever met in my life collectively, and 2, because this is a movement. Make no mistake. What we are doing here is meaningful and profound, and that's why we're here today. And so how does a consumer decide? Here's an oversimplification. 1, they have feelings about what you do. And in order to justify those feelings, like eating the second piece of cake, you tell yourself a story that you deserve it, right? And then if you get really, really good at telling yourself a story, and if you guys get really, really great at telling stories, the brain starts to help out with that purchase decision by giving them a dose of dopamine, which gives them focus, motivation, and memory, and oxytocin, which is known as the love drug, right? This is why we place a child immediately after childbirth on the chest of the mother, because it's generosity, trust, and bonding. If we get great at telling stories, these 2 fire in the brain, and we've got a connection with that consumer. The very last thing they'll do, though, friends, is facts. That is not very interesting to the modern consumer. This is why I go into lots of rooms and tell them that family owned and operated for 125 years is not a marketing strategy. That is a fact. That might be interesting to some people, but that's not how you get velocity. That's not how you create a movement. And the spoilers to all of this is that we don't actually need more content. We have enough. What we need is better content. So how do we get better content? Well, we get really, really good at telling stories. And I'm going to give you an example. Everybody in this room is an expert at what they do in this space. And when you're an expert in this space and an expert storyteller, magic can happen. I'll show you. Can we all agree that this movie is about a rogue shark that terrorizes a town during the 4th of July weekend and two men bounding together to kill the shark? Can we agree on this? Can we agree on this? Awesome. Okay. Now, what if I told you instead this movie is actually about a shark who's on his own in the ocean? We might even say that this shark is home alone. And so the shark finds out that these two human beings are trying to break into his house, and he's going to figure out a way to protect his house, which is the ocean. And so our friend the shark creates a plan, executes on that plan to the best of his ability, and in the end he falls short and dies defending his home. Now, I've done two things there. I've either tuned most of you out, that might be one of them, but the other thing that I've done is changed nothing in the film Jaws other than the way in which you see it. And by doing that, I have, one, again, changed the way that you see the movie, and two, entered Jaws into the discussion that it might, in fact, be a Christmas movie too. But when you get great at telling stories, you can do that. One of the things that happens when we spend so much time with our product is we think our product is boring, I don't know how to tell a story on this thing anymore, but we just got to find another angle to tell that story. Because there are so many people who don't know what we do, and we need them to enter the space. We need better content. Okay, this is my favorite slide that Hootsuite has put out this year. It's their mild to wild thing, and basically what it illustrates is most content that's put out on the internet ends up being on the green side, something that a robot could write. No emotion, no understanding the consumer behavior, none of that stuff. And what we really want to do is we want to end up in that kind of post with flair. This wild area gets us all in trouble in whatever vertical we're in. But this with flair is the space where we can play. Because modern marketing does not get close enough to the people it's trying to touch. Because we spend too much time, and we don't have enough time to go into this, but I can do it offline if you'd like to. We spend too much time focusing on demographics and not enough time focusing on how these people interact in the real world. What this looks like in the real world is when we look at a brand like Nike. Now, a brand like Nike, their community is centered around the following premise, is that they believe the human body, no matter what it looks like, is an amazing machine and does amazing things, and we just happen to be a lifestyle brand. And that's what their advertising looks like, right? Amazing people doing amazing things that just happens to be a lifestyle brand. Because they're asking themselves, what does our hero need right now? And that's what we need to ask ourselves. What does our hero need right this very second? And one of the great places that I like to start, and I'm going to bring out our guest here in a second, is what are the 5 questions that a new consumer in your brand would ask? And do you have content that answers those questions? Is it in email? Is it in YouTube? Is it in TikTok? Can they find it? And then where do we put that stuff? And we'll do this very quickly and we'll bring Jessica out. Like, is it before, in what we call pre-purchase, before they know we exist? Is it after they buy it? Is it during the purchase? Where does that piece of content go? What channel does it go on? And then how do we know it worked? With any advertising, we've got to measure it, right? We've got to see that it worked and then rinse and repeat and test. One of the things we'll talk to Jessica about is this idea that if you get great at storytelling and you understand these platforms, 1, people want to shower you with money, and 2, we're able to understand when the algorithm changes because we're in the space all the time. And with that, please put your hands together and welcome my guest, Jessica Golich. Jessica.
Thank you.
Got it. All right, friend. First of all, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I am excellent.
I love the outfit.
Thank you. I purchased it just for you. I want to start so that people kind of have some understanding of where you came from and how you got here. You know, kind of the very quick hero's journey of Jessica. Like,
it has been a hero's journey.
I know it has.
So I am a high school dropout, and I began social media at about 21 years old. I got a job as a journalist really quickly, and I was able to tour the country taking photos of musicians, going to music festivals nonstop. but it wasn't until TikTok that I was really able to scale and put my name out there globally.
And so when you get to TikTok, how quickly are you understanding what can happen on this platform for you?
So I got an email from TikTok directly in 2018, December 2018. And this was right when they started. Nobody was on the platform but the kids that are absolutely massive on there now. And I know that you know from
Sure.
These kids have 150 million followers, brand deals all over the place. I got the email. I said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'm open-minded. Let's do it. Then I started realizing, okay, why do I have 50,000 followers in 3 months? What's going on here? This is a different algorithm. I have to learn the technical aspects of this to maximize this for my career. And I told a couple friends about it. Still, nobody's jumping on it. The For You page was very empty at that time. We're reaching millions and millions of people. And then I started to really prioritize it and distance myself from Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook in particular. And it blew up way beyond my expectations and changed my life.
One of the fascinating things about your TikTok, and you and I have talked about this a number of times offline, is you have a very specific aesthetic.
Yeah.
The TikToks look a very specific way. Mm-hmm. When did you figure out that aesthetic, and what does that aesthetic mean for your brand?
I always look at color psychology when it comes to marketing because the consumer is looking at it from warmth and wants to be invited into their home. And I try to create that warmth through the colors that I use and ensuring that I'm providing that dopamine kick and serotonin kick to them. It's not for me. I'm not creating content for myself anymore. I'm trying to find thrill, excitement, joy, and peace within others and stepping out of myself and recognizing through color, through branding, and asking questions. I don't know if you've recognized this in my content, and I appreciate you watching. I ask a lot of questions, and I include a lot of people, and I always reply to as many people as I possibly can. It's gotten to a point now that I can't really reply to everybody, but I try to even do, TikTok has this unique feature where you can take a comment and create a video through that comment, and that surprise to that viewer makes their day, and that makes my day.
So you've been doing a ton of interviews about this, right? Because you're sort of one of the things I would say about you is that you don't ever stop, right? The algorithms might slow you down for a second, but you'll figure out a way around it, right?
I will never stop, and that's my key advantage is that I'm very aggressive, and I am very peculiar in my aggression, and knowing that I have this shot now that this TikTok platform is not. Everybody you know has an Instagram. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's kind of commonplace to ask somebody for their Instagram. You can't do that with TikTok. Until that time comes, you might as well go full force.
So what I was getting around to is you've done a number of interviews. The one you did with Montel Williams, I believe about a year ago, one of the things that caught him off guard that I, of course, glommed onto given the last 15 minutes that I did is that you talked about being human-centric, right?
Yeah.
You talked about, very similar to the heroes, like putting that consumer first. Can you dive a little bit deeper in your theory about putting that person, that human first, and what that looks like in a social platform?
Yeah, so I'll look at it from my personal experience. I've spent a lot of my life as an outsider, and I've spent a lot of my life not being included in places that I desire to be included, and I ensure that within the content, I try to put them in a position of feeling welcomed, of having their questions being answered as my priority, not only what my desires are. I ask my TikTok followers all the time, what would you like to see out of me? What content do you want to see? What do you want more of? Do you want more of the Detroit stuff, the music stuff, the cannabis stuff? You tell me. I'm making content for them.
And what are they telling you?
They love the Detroit stuff. So I do a lot of just going through Detroit, I have a full Detroit history folder. If you guys want to check it out, it's awesome. And it just showcases everything, just historical pieces of the city. I go visit all over the city. I get invited to a ton of events, and it just brings that feeling of nostalgia. I really loved what you put in your presentation regarding dopamine and serotonin, because a lot of people lack that in their life, especially with all that's going on in the world today. Why not be that individual to help boost that within somebody? That's purpose to me.
So you've been on this roller coaster ride for the last, probably I know it's taken a minute.
Without a seatbelt, it feels like.
Yes, without a seatbelt. How have you navigated through that, right? Because you went from 0 to 60, right? When Musical.ly morphed into TikTok, they tried to jump that chasm and obviously started to invite people that would bring some attention to the platform that would become.
That's cool that you know that, yeah.
That would become TikTok. And what's interesting is whatever room you get into, to your point, they share Instagram, but you can undoubtedly ask how many people have a TikTok, and you'll get maybe half the room will say that. But if you ask how many have seen a TikTok, you get consensus, right? What has this ride been like for you, and how do you navigate through that?
So right now it's scaling at a very high rate to where I'm hoping to incorporate an agency. But what I did proactively, and one of the best decisions of my life, I had only $20,000 left to my name, and I was like, you know what? Let's put it into press. I don't care. I moved back into my parents' house, and I am so grateful that they gave me that opportunity to do it. And I hired a publicist, and she took my name globally. And we didn't think it would happen so fast, and she really dialed into who I was as a human being, and she was able to get me in tons of publications and completely changed my life.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was a huge risk, but like I said, the best decision I ever made in hindsight, and her and I's relationship will be lifetime.
So for the people here today, obviously Google and Facebook are probably not friends to most of us in this room, right? But we have to find an audience somehow. We have to find a new audience. We've got to talk to our existing audience. What is your strategy about social in this space, and what tips can you give them to navigate through some of these pitfalls?
So I use a good example of my partnership with Ooze. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them, but they create a lot of gadgets and products. But we really focused on comedy and making pure comedy videos, and we soared. We got over 1 million views throughout our partnership. They've gotten a ton of new customers. And for them to open that door for me so I get a lot of brand deals, and a lot of the companies will come forward with their presentation of exactly what they desire out of the influencer. That, to me, I'm not signing that contract.
Yep.
If you aren't allowing me to be exactly who I am and hiring me for who I am, it won't work. So Ooze kind of allowing us to be a little bit more lenient and not only focus on me just highlighting their products and focusing on comedy while I'm wearing their t-shirt, or subliminally adding in their marketing into the video, we killed it. And that to me is, you just have to remain open-minded. We are so regulated currently, and until federal legalization comes, we will be regulated with marketing. So I highly recommend to branch out, think of comedy, think of events. There's a company, Wonder Brett and Cloud Cannabis. They partnered for, just in Michigan. Wonder Brett's coming to Michigan, or they have come to Michigan. And what I really enjoyed that they did, which was different, is they held a party. And it was a huge party that they had. And it was just so much fun. And things like that will help bring people like me wanting to show your brand even for free sometimes, because you took such good care of me while I was there.
So watching you grow, one of the things that your growth, and particularly, I believe you called it a peculiar aggressiveness, your peculiar aggressiveness sort of mirrors Mr. Beast's rise, right? Completely dedicating himself to understanding how YouTube works at a level where he probably doesn't have any idea how to make a Facebook post. I mean, that's an oversimplification, but he understands that platform and then built an empire. I
love Mr. Beast.
I guessed that you might.
Yeah.
For this room, though, a lot of these teams don't have someone who can dedicate every hour of every day understanding a single platform. They're small teams trying to be super nimble. What are some tactical things that they could do today to get better faster without having the ability to, some of the stuff that you do where you know how many times a day to go on live, to trick the algorithm, to kick your, a lot of people in this room won't have time to do that. What are some other things that they could do to maximize their exposure with minimizing being on a platform that right now is not one of the most fun things to do in the job?
That's a good question. I'd say to maximize your study time. Throughout my career, I look at my career as going through college. I feel like I'm still a college student. I go on YouTube and study all the people that I know are in positions because they are learning the technical elements of the app. Study all of the best people that know what they're doing with marketing. You could actually, Mr. Beast is a huge example. Personally, I have studied Paris Hilton for the past 5 or 6 years, and I admire her entirely. Her entire brand was built. People think that it's because of her grandfather. No, she built her brand from scratch, and everything that she does has built her out to be a $4 billion business. And she, to me, is a marketing genius in a way that we've never seen, and I've studied her thoroughly. I just recommend to study these public figures because they know the route to take, and you just have to remain open-minded.
So we'll take some questions here in a second, but 2 more from me before we open it up. And one is, you recently put out a book. How did, walk me through that process? Because one of the things that's fascinating to me is when influencers that are killing it in a very specific space make a hard left and go do something that you're like, a what?
Right.
The average American doesn't read one of those a year. Why did you make any of those, right?
So, I'll be forthright. After I hit 150 million views on TikTok in 2 years, I was like, okay, I gotta turn a corner. And I've been writing my whole life, and I got first published in the American Anthology of Poetry when I was 11 years old. And it's been something that comes out of me. I'm just a natural born artist. And I started to learn how to self-publish on Amazon, and then I hired a graphic designer, hired a couple people to help me navigate getting the book situated properly, and I decided to make it about cannabis because I desire to get a book deal over the next few years.
And so that leads me to the next question, then we'll open it up to questions. What's next? What's the rest of this year look like?
So a lot of companies are trying to pick me up to take over their marketing, and I'm getting some huge offers. So that to me is something I'm keeping at the forefront. A lot of people want to move me out to California, and that is something I've always wanted in my life. So if the right number comes across, I'm willing to do that. But if I do remain down the personal brand road, it's ultimately getting signed to an agency. I had one agency reach out to me, but it didn't match, and I will wait until the right one does. And once you get signed to an agency, basically they take over your career and move that into film, move that into TV. HBO actually reached out to me recently, which was really, really cool, to ask me to be on a lesbian reality show, which I found really unique and could be a good opportunity, but it didn't match with the brand identity I want to build. And things like this just continue to come down the road, and I'm taking my time. That's the way I put it.
Awesome. Do you have any questions? Right there, and
hi. So there's a lot of different, groups here, and I'm sure a lot of us are thinking, okay, we want her to represent our brand. We see a lot of partnerships with public figures and celebrities happening in Michigan. They happen all over. What advice would you give to a group or a company that's looking to potentially partner with a public figure? What are some things to kind of vet that relationship as far as, there's basic information, but what would you recommend?
So I would definitely, that's a good question. I would highly recommend having a a set budget and ensuring you're going in with the right person, because a lot of people will match with just public figures just to get out there, but you want to strictly stick with someone that's in cannabis, someone that's focusing on social justice as well. I think it's so important that we use our platforms, and every company continues to use their platforms to highlight those that are still spending time in prison for something that everyone's monetizing through. Going back to that, let me think. The best route would be direct communication as well, inviting them. So I had a company, which I really enjoyed, invite the warmth of your content. How can I incorporate this into, how can you bring value to our brand? How can we work together to bring value?
Who else has a question? Right there.
Can you speak a little more to, you're kind of talking about like literally hiding the brands in your platform or your TikTok. We were really excited to launch our TikTok page, and immediately we're just getting dinged. Even for just the CBD side of our business, we're just immediately pinging it, saying it's, not allowed on the platform, and kind of slowed us down.
Yeah, so with Ooze, what I did was I took their PNG and just blasted that all through the content. I made sure that I was actually wearing their, you gotta use physical merch, because we can't use bongs, we can't use smoke, we can't use just normal day-to-day consumption. So you have to make sure that you're maximizing merch, and I highly recommend that brands think this forward in ensuring that their merch is accessible to everybody. Make sure a kid could wear that shirt. Make sure a kid can advertise and wear that shirt, then you'll be able to get past these algorithms, because it's tough. TikTok, I understand, it's getting really, really tough in regards to that. Make sure that you have the merch prepared. Make sure you have the pants. If you can get socks, if you can get sweatbands, if you can get headbands, we'll wear it all. You can get shoes. Ooze custom made me a pair of shoes. One of the best decisions that we've made, because I have Ooze blasted all over these shoes. No one has a clue that that's cannabis marketing, but people were like, oh, where do we get those shoes? You know what I mean? What's the brand behind those shoes? It's about getting deeper into the marketing cycle, and not only your typical hiring an influencer to smoke a bong on Instagram Live.
Who else has a question? Oh, there we go, right there.
Okay, so I'm just going to admit, I'm like the old person in the room. I don't know how TikTok works, I don't know how social media works, but as somebody who wants to try to do something that's never been done, could you just give just any advice for how do you even start? And that sounds really dumb, but...
No, it's not at all. Eliminate the crowd. Don't think of what they want. You have to begin with you. What keeps you up at night? What is your passion to give back to this world? What do you desire? What footprint? I mean, what do you desire to leave this world with? And that is where I really started, and that starting point will lead you into so many ideas, and your brain will open up to so many more ideas as you continue to consume more content. You have to spend a lot of time consuming what others are creating to kind of build your own ideals through what they're doing. Don't ever limit yourself. Don't ever think starting from zero is a place of impossible. I started from zero. I know so many people that start from zero, and you can do anything that you put your heart to.
Thank you.
Yep.
And on top of that, what I would say is her numbers are incredible, right? You don't need 151 million people to watch your content to make a living.
Yeah.
Not at all. So starting with what you believe in and what you're going to stand for is probably the most important thing. And I'll tell a really quick story, and a lot of light bulbs will go out in about 4 seconds. I spent a lot of time working in radio, about 2 decades, right? And I was working with a guy who was doing a night show, and he was kind of in your face and brash and would hang up on people and yell at them, and people loved it. But when he went out in person, he was terrified of people, and he didn't talk to anyone. And so he didn't last very long because they thought this professional wrestler was going to show up and cut a promo on these people, and he would just like hide in the back and let the salesperson talk, and it didn't work because he picked something that wasn't him. You know, one of the things that works best on social, and I would love your take on this, is take a part of your personality and put it through a pro wrestling lens. Take one part and amplify it to its extent. But it's always still a part of you, it just is amplified through that network.
You'd be surprised how often people are intrigued by your everyday life. Say you're cooking in the kitchen, turn on the camera. Say you're out in the garden, turn on the camera. You're taking a drive responsibly, turn on the camera. There's somebody on TikTok who I'm seeing blowing up right now. She has her camera going while she's driving. She's not paying any attention to the camera, but she has text going over, it's called driving therapy, showcasing just like her views of modern therapy. She's blowing up on there and she's not doing anything. It's literally just having that filmed right there. You just have to get over yourself. Really get over yourself, recognize that you're one person of billions in this world, and put yourself out there.
And the last thing I will say, and we got time for one more question, is your first video, your first podcast, your first blog post, your first tweet is gonna suck. So the longer you wait, the more it's gonna suck. So it's better to just start now and get better faster.
Yeah.
One last question, right in the middle.
Is it ever too late to start?
Never.
No.
Never. Listen to this story. So there's someone named, I've got stories for days. There's someone named Grandma Dronian on TikTok. She's 82, and she is blowing, she has 3.5 million followers. Coach is one of her main brand deals. Nowadays, with where society is with acceptance, with diversity, with inclusion, all these companies want people of all ages. They want people of all backgrounds. It is never, ever too late to start. Personally, I desire to see those that weren't necessarily fulfilled throughout their lifetime, desire to take another route and get there.
And I would say one last thing on that, and we'll close this out. One of the things that happened technologically during COVID is it flattened how people view television. Because the very first moment that somebody sees a monologue from Tom Hanks on SNL shot on an iPhone, the game is up. We're all in the game now, right? Because now I don't need a $10 million camera and a lighting crew and microphones, because all I need is a phone. And if all you need is a phone, there's never a late moment to start. You just gotta go. All right, Jessica, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
One
you
more time
so
for
much.
Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, friends.